My husband died in a car crash on a Tuesday afternoon. I buried him that Saturday, surrounded by family and friends who loved him. The church was full of flowers and the sound of people crying. I thought it was the worst day of my life. I was wrong. In the middle of the service, a pregnant woman I had never seen before walked through the church doors. She walked straight down the aisle like she owned the place. She approached my husband's open casket, touched his face with her fingers, and whispered, "Daddy, we will be okay." I sat frozen in my seat. My heart stopped beating. My daughter grabbed my arm and asked who that woman was. I had no answer. After the service, I found the woman standing by a black Mercedes in the parking lot. I asked her who she was and how she knew my husband. She looked at me with a calm smile and said, "Oh, honey, you are just wife number 3. I am wife number 1. And this baby I am carrying, this is the only heir Franklin ever wanted. My name is Della Parsons. I am 68 years old. And this is the story of how my husband's funeral revealed a web of lies that destroyed everything I thought I knew about my marriage. If you are new here, make sure to subscribe and drop a comment telling me where you are watching from. I read every single one. I need to take you back to the beginning so you can understand how deeply Franklin fooled me. I met him 22 years ago at a church fundraiser in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I was 46 years old at the time, and I had been a widow for 3 years. My first husband, Raymond, died from cancer after 20 years of marriage. We had one daughter together, Bettina, and she was everything to me. After Raymond passed, I thought I would never love again. I thought that chapter of my life was closed forever. Then Franklin Parsons walked into my world and changed everything. He was 48 years old with silver hair and a smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He was tall and well-dressed and carried himself with confidence. He introduced himself to me at the punch bowl and asked about my work. I told him I was a retired nurse. He said his mother had been a nurse and that it was the most noble profession in the world. He asked if he could call me sometime. I said yes before I even knew what I was doing. Our courtship was like something from a movie. Franklin sent me flowers every week. He took me to nice restaurants and held doors open and pulled out my chair. He remembered every small detail I told him about He asked about Bettina and made an effort to include her in our activities. He seemed genuinely interested in being part of our family, not just dating me. Franklin told me about his past during our 3rd month of dating. He said he had been married once before, a long time ago when he was young. He said the marriage ended badly and his ex-wife moved overseas. He said they had no children together and no contact anymore. He seemed sad when he talked about it, like a man carrying old regrets. I felt sorry for him. I thought we were both wounded people who had found healing in each other. We got married in 2003 at the same church where we met. It was a small ceremony with just close friends and family. Bettina was my maid of honor, though I could tell she had reservations. She pulled me aside before the ceremony and said, "Franklin seemed too good to be true." She said he was too charming, too smooth, too perfect. She said real people have flaws and Franklin never showed any. I told her she was being overprotective. I told her I was a grown woman who could make my own decisions. I wish now that I had listened to her. For 22 years, Franklin and I built what I believed was a beautiful life together. We bought a ranch-style home on a quiet street with a big backyard and a front porch where we drank coffee every morning. I decorated every room with care and filled the house with memories. We hosted holiday dinners and birthday parties and Sunday barbecues. Our neighbors thought we were the perfect couple. I thought so too. Franklin ran a consulting business that required him to travel frequently. He was gone 2 or 3 weeks out of every month, sometimes more. He said he had clients all over the country who needed his expertise. He would pack his suitcase, kiss me goodbye, and promise to call every night. And he always did call. Every single night, no matter where he was, my phone would ring at 8 o'clock, and Franklin's voice would be on the other end, asking about my day. I never questioned his travel schedule. I never asked for details about his clients or his work. I trusted him completely. When you love someone for 22 years, you stop looking for reasons to doubt them. You assume the best, because assuming the worst feels like a betrayal. Franklin gave me no reason to suspect anything was wrong. He came home with gifts from every trip. He brought me jewelry from New York, and perfume from Los Angeles, and chocolates from Chicago. He made me feel special, and loved, and treasured. Franklin handled all of our finances. He said he wanted to protect me from stress and worry. He said money management was complicated, and he had more experience with it. I let him take control because it seemed easier. I had access to a joint checking account for household expenses, but I never saw the investment accounts or the retirement funds. I signed tax returns without reading them carefully. I trusted my husband to take care of our future together. Looking back now, I can see all the warning signs I ignored. Franklin was secretive about his phone. He always kept it face down on the table and took calls in another room. He had a home office that he kept locked, saying it contained confidential client information. He got defensive when I asked too many questions about his business trips. I noticed these things at the time, but I explained them away. I told myself he was just a private person. I told myself successful businessmen have to be careful about security. I told myself I was lucky to have a husband who worked so hard to provide for us. Bettina never stopped being suspicious of Franklin. Over the years, she would make small comments about things that bothered her. She noticed that Franklin's stories sometimes changed slightly when he retold them. She noticed that he never introduced us to any of his family members, claiming they were all dead or estranged. She noticed that old friends from his past never came to visit or even called. She asked me once if I had ever verified anything Franklin told me about his life before we met. I got angry with her. I accused her of trying to ruin my happiness. We did not speak for 2 weeks after that argument. The phone call came on a Tuesday afternoon in March. I was in the kitchen making soup when my cell phone rang. A police officer asked if I was the wife of Franklin Parsons. I said yes. He told me there had been an accident. A truck ran a red light at an intersection and hit Franklin's car on the driver's side. He was killed instantly. He did not suffer. I dropped the phone. I sank to the kitchen floor and sat there with my back against the cabinets, unable to move or think or breathe. The soup boiled over on the stove. I did not notice. I just sat there staring at the wall, trying to make sense of words that made no sense. Franklin was gone. My husband of 22 years was dead. I would never hear his voice again. I would never feel his arms around me. I would never grow old with him the way we planned. Bettina found me 2 hours later. She had been calling, and I had not answered. She drove over and let herself in with her spare key. She found me still sitting on the kitchen floor, the soup burned black in the pot, my face blank with shock. She held me while I cried. She made phone calls and arrangements. She handled everything I could not handle because my mind had stopped working. The funeral was scheduled for Saturday. I spent the days between the accident and the service in a fog. People came and went from my house bringing casseroles and flowers. Friends hugged me and said kind things I could not process. I nodded and thanked them and counted the hours until I could bury my husband and begin learning how to live without him. I had no idea that the funeral would reveal secrets that would destroy my memories of our life together. I had no idea that a pregnant stranger would walk down that church aisle and shatter my world. I thought I was burying the man I loved. I did not know I was burying a stranger. The funeral service was held at First Baptist Church on a Saturday morning, the same church where Franklin and I met at that fundraiser 22 years ago, the same church where we got married. It felt right to say goodbye to him there, in the place where our love story began. Over 200 people filled the pews that day. Franklin was well known in our community. He served on charity boards and donated to local causes, and always had a kind word for everyone he met. People loved him. I thought I knew why. I sat in the front row with Bettina on my right side. She held my hand through the opening prayers and the hymns. I was wearing a black dress that Franklin had bought me for our 20th anniversary. I thought he would have wanted me to wear something he gave me. I thought it was a way to honor him. Now that memory makes me sick to my stomach. The minister was talking about Franklin's generous spirit when I heard the church doors open behind me. A murmur rippled through the congregation. I did not turn around at first because I assumed it was just a late arrival, but the whispers grew louder. Bettina squeezed my hand tighter. I finally turned my head to see what everyone was looking at. A young woman was walking down the center aisle. She was maybe 35 years old with long, dark hair and perfect makeup. She was wearing an expensive black dress that hugged her pregnant belly. She was at least 7 or 8 months along from the size of her stomach. She walked slowly and deliberately, like she wanted everyone to see her. Her heels clicked against the wooden floor with each step. I did not recognize her. I had never seen this woman before in my entire life. I assumed she was a business associate of Franklin's, or maybe a distant relative I had never met. Franklin always said his family was complicated. I thought perhaps someone had reached out when they heard about his death. The woman walked all the way to the front of the church. She stopped at Franklin's open casket and stood there for a long moment, looking down at his face. The whole church went silent. Even the minister stopped speaking. Everyone was watching this stranger like she was putting on a performance. She reached out and touched Franklin's cheek with her fingertips. She leaned down close to his ear, and then she whispered something that only the people in the front rows could hear. She said, "Daddy, we will be okay." She kissed his forehead gently. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a small photograph. She tucked it into the casket beside Franklin's hand, and without looking at anyone, she turned and walked back down the aisle and out the church door. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. Bettina was asking me questions, but I could not hear her. The blood was rushing in my ears. Did that woman just call my husband Daddy? Franklin told me he had no children. He told me his first marriage ended without any kids. Who was this pregnant stranger, and why was she putting photographs in my husband's casket? I could not focus on the rest of the service. The minister kept talking, but his words sounded like noise. I kept replaying what I had seen, the way she touched his face, the way she kissed his forehead, the way she said, "Daddy," like it was the most natural word in the world. Something was very wrong. After the service ended, I told Bettina I needed air. I walked outside into the parking lot, looking for the woman in the black dress. I found her standing beside a black Mercedes, typing something on her phone. She looked up when she heard my footsteps approaching. She did not seem surprised to see me. I asked her who she was. I asked how she knew my husband. I asked what she meant when she called him Daddy. My voice was shaking, but I forced myself to keep talking. I needed answers. The woman smiled at me, not a cruel smile, but the kind of smile you give someone when you know something they do not know. She said her name was Yolanda. She said Franklin, and she were married in 1985 in Texas. She said they never got divorced. She said that made her his legal wife and made me nothing but a mistress who did not know her place. I told her that was impossible. I told her Franklin was divorced when I met him. I told her I had been his wife for 22 years. She laughed softly and shook her head like I was a child who did not understand simple math. She said Franklin married another woman named Cecile in Nevada in 2001. She said he married me in Oklahoma in 2003. She said neither of those marriages were legal because he was still married to her the whole time. She said I was wife number 3 and Cecile was wife number 2. She said we were both fooled by the same man. I felt my legs going weak. Bettina had followed me outside and caught my arm before I could fall. She asked what was happening. I could not speak. Yolanda kept talking. She said the baby she was carrying was Franklin's child. She said it was his only biological child because his other marriages never produced children. She said Franklin was thrilled when she told him about the pregnancy. She said he had been planning to leave me and Cecile both, so he could finally be with his real family. Then Yolanda reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. She handed it to me and said I should call this lawyer on Monday morning. She said Franklin left everything to her and the baby in his real will. She said the house I lived in belonged to her now. She said I should start packing. She got into her Mercedes and drove away. I stood in that parking lot holding a business card with shaking hands, watching my entire life crumble into dust. I did not sleep that night. I sat in my living room with the lights off, staring at the business card Yolanda had given me. My mind kept racing through 22 years of memory, searching for clues I had missed. Every business trip, every locked door, every phone call taken in another room. The pieces were starting to form a picture I did not want to see. Bettina stayed with me that night. She made me tea that I did not drink. She brought me blankets I did not use. She sat beside me in the darkness and waited for me to speak. Around 3 in the morning, I finally told her everything Yolanda had said. I told her about wife number 1 and wife number 2. I told her about the baby. I told her about the will that supposedly left everything to Yolanda. Bettina did not say, "I told you so." She did not remind me of all the warnings she had given me over the years. She just took my hand and said we were going to fight this. She said we would not let some stranger take everything I had worked for. She said we needed a lawyer, and we needed one fast. The next morning, Bettina called a friend who worked at a law firm downtown. She got a recommendation for an attorney named Patricia Vance, who specialized in estate fraud and family law. Patricia agreed to see us that same afternoon. I was still wearing the clothes from the funeral. I had not showered or eaten, but I went to that meeting because I needed to know the truth. Patricia was a sharp woman in her 50s, with gray streaks in her dark hair and reading glasses perched on her nose. She listened carefully as I told her the whole story. She asked questions about Franklin's business, his travel schedule, his finances. She asked if I had any documentation about our marriage or his supposed first marriage. I had our marriage certificate and nothing else. Franklin had kept everything locked away in his office. Patricia said we needed to investigate before we could fight. She said the first step was verifying Yolanda's claims. She would request marriage records from Texas, Nevada, and Oklahoma. She would search for any divorce filings under Franklin's name. She would dig into his business records and financial accounts. She warned me that what we found might be painful. I told her nothing could be more painful than what I was already feeling. Bettina took time off work to help me search the house. We started with Franklin's locked office. The key was on his keychain, which the police had returned with his personal effects from the accident. My hands trembled as I unlocked the door for the first time in 22 years. I had never been inside this room. Franklin said it contained confidential client information that could get him in legal trouble if anyone saw it. I believed him because I always believed him. The office was neat and organized, with a large wooden desk and filing cabinets along the wall. Bettina and I started going through everything, drawer by drawer. What we found made my stomach turn. There were 3 separate checkbooks for 3 separate bank accounts. There were credit card statements in different variations of Franklin's name. There were phone bills for a cell phone number I had never seen before. In the bottom drawer of the desk, we found a folder labeled Personal. Inside were photographs. Dozens of photographs of Franklin with women I did not recognize. Franklin at a beach house with a blonde woman in her 40s. Franklin at a Christmas party with Yolanda, both of them smiling at the camera. Franklin holding a newborn baby wrapped in a pink blanket. The dates on the backs of the photos spanned decades. We also found 3 different life insurance policies. One named me as the beneficiary. One named someone called Cecile Monroe in Phoenix. One named Yolanda Reyes in Houston. Each policy was worth over $200,000. Franklin had been planning for his death, making sure all 3 of his wives thought they would be taken care of. Bettina found an address book with names and phone numbers organized by city. Houston, Phoenix, Tulsa. 3 cities, 3 lives, 3 women who all believed they were married to the same man. The depth of Franklin's deception was staggering. He had not just lied to me. He had built entirely separate existences that he maintained for decades. Patricia called me 2 days later with the results of her research. The marriage records confirmed everything Yolanda had said. Franklin married Yolanda Reyes in Houston, Texas in 1985. There was no record of a divorce anywhere in the country. He married Cecile Monroe in Las Vegas, Nevada in 2001 using a slightly different spelling of his middle name. He married me in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 2003 using another variation. Both marriages were bigamous and therefore not legally valid. I had never been Franklin's wife at all. I asked Patricia about Cecile. She gave me a phone number in Phoenix. I stared at it for a long time before I found the courage to dial. A woman answered on the 3rd ring. Her voice was warm and friendly until I said Franklin's name. Then there was silence. I told Cecile who I was. I told her what I had learned. I asked if she knew about me or Yolanda. She did not. She had been married to Franklin for 24 years, or so she thought. She had supported him through what she believed was a difficult divorce from his first wife. She had introduced him to her 2 children from her previous marriage, and he had become their stepfather. She loved him. She trusted him. She was as destroyed by the truth as I was. Cecile and I talked for over 2 hours that first night. We compared stories and timelines and memories. We realized Franklin had created an elaborate schedule that allowed him to spend roughly equal time with each of us. His business trips to Phoenix were visits to Cecile. His business trips to Houston were visits to Yolanda. We had all been living in the same lie without knowing the others existed. Patricia called me a week after the funeral with news that changed everything. She said something about Yolanda's story did not add up. She had been reviewing the original marriage certificate from 1985 and comparing it to the woman who appeared at the funeral. The math was wrong. Yolanda claimed to be Franklin's first wife from 1985, but she was only 34 years old. If she married Franklin in 1985, she would have been negative 4 years old at the time. That was obviously impossible. Patricia dug deeper into the records. She found a death certificate for Yolanda Reyes Parsons, dated 2019. The real Yolanda, Franklin's actual first wife, died from a heart condition 6 years ago. She was 62 years old when she passed. Franklin had been legally married to a dead woman for the past 6 years. That meant the pregnant woman at the funeral was not who she claimed to be. I felt my head spinning as Patricia explained what she had discovered. The woman who confronted me at the funeral was an imposter. She had stolen a dead woman's identity to claim Franklin's estate. But how did she know about Franklin's secret marriages? How did she know about me and Cecile? How did she know enough to create such an elaborate lie? Patricia hired a private investigator to find answers. Within 3 days, he uncovered the truth. The pregnant woman's real name was Tanya Morrison. She was 34 years old with a criminal record for fraud and identity theft in 3 different states. She had met Franklin at a hotel bar in Dallas 2 years ago. They had an affair that lasted several months. During that time, Tanya discovered Franklin's secret life by going through his phone and his wallet while he slept. Tanya realized Franklin was a bigamist with significant assets and multiple families who did not know about each other. She saw an opportunity. She researched his past and found records of his first marriage to the real Yolanda. She discovered that Yolanda had died and that Franklin never reported her death or filed any paperwork. Tanya created a plan to pose as the original Yolanda and claim everything Franklin owned. The pregnancy was part of the scheme. Tanya was indeed pregnant, but the baby was not Franklin. Patricia obtained Franklin's medical records as part of the estate investigation. The records showed that Franklin had a vasectomy in 1992. He had been unable to father children for over 30 years. Tanya's baby belonged to someone else entirely. The whole story about Franklin being excited to become a father was a complete fabrication. Patricia arranged a meeting with Tanya at her law office. She told Tanya it was to discuss a settlement and avoid a lengthy court battle. Tanya agreed immediately. She showed up looking confident and smug, wearing expensive clothes and carrying a designer handbag. She clearly thought she had won. I was sitting in the conference room when Tanya walked in. Bettina was beside me. Cecile had flown in from Phoenix to be there too. 3 women who had been deceived by the same man, now united against the woman trying to steal from all of us. Patricia laid out the evidence piece by piece. She showed Tanya the death certificate for the real Yolanda Reyes. She showed her the medical records proving Franklin's vasectomy. She showed her the criminal background check with Tanya's real name and her history of fraud. Tanya's confident expression crumbled with each document Patricia placed on the table. Tanya tried to talk her way out of it. She said there must be some mistake. She said the documents were fake. She said we were conspiring against her because we were jealous. Her voice got higher and more desperate as she realized her scheme was falling apart. Patricia told Tanya that she had already contacted the police. Detectives were waiting outside the conference room. Tanya was going to be arrested for fraud, identity theft, and attempted estate theft. She could either cooperate and answer questions, or she could make things harder for herself. The choice was hers. Tanya started crying. She said she was just trying to provide for her baby. She said Franklin had promised her things and then abandoned her. She said she deserved something after everything he put her through. I felt no sympathy for her. She had walked into my husband's funeral and tried to destroy what little I had left. She had lied to my face and smiled while doing it. She deserved whatever punishment was coming. The police took Tanya away in handcuffs. I watched through the conference room window as they put her in the back of a patrol car. Bettina squeezed my shoulder. Cecile let out a long breath. It was over. The imposter had been caught. But there was still the matter of Franklin's estate. Patricia explained the legal situation to me and Cecile. Since the real Yolanda died before Franklin, and they never divorced, and since neither of our marriages was legally valid, the estate had no legal spouse to inherit. Under normal circumstances, everything would go to Franklin's next of kin or to the state if no relatives could be found. However, Patricia argued that Cecile and I were victims of fraud. We entered our marriages in good faith, believing Franklin was legally divorced. We spent decades building lives with a man who lied to us about the most fundamental aspects of our relationship. We deserved compensation for what he stole from us, which was not just money, but years of our lives. The court agreed with Patricia's argument. The judge ruled that Franklin's estate should be divided between me and Cecile as fraud victims. I received the house in Tulsa and half of the financial accounts. Cecile received the house in Phoenix and the other half. It was not justice in any complete sense. No amount of money could give us back the years we wasted on a man who never truly belonged to us. But it was something. It was enough to start over. I sold the house in Tulsa 3 months after the court ruling. I could not live there anymore. Every room reminded me of Franklin. Every piece of furniture held a memory that was now tainted by lies. I used to love sitting on the front porch with my morning coffee, watching the sun rise over the neighborhood we had built our life in. Now that porch just reminded me of all the mornings. Franklin kissed me goodbye before driving off to his other families. The home we shared had become a museum of deception, and I needed to escape it. Bettina helped me pack up 22 years of belongings. We sorted through everything together, deciding what to keep and what to throw away. I kept the photo albums from before I met Franklin, pictures of my first husband Raymond, and our early years raising Bettina. I kept the jewelry my mother left me and the quilt my grandmother made. Everything Franklin ever gave me went into garbage bags. The expensive jewelry from his trips, the anniversary gifts, the love letters he wrote that I now knew were full of lies. I did not want any of it. I could not look at those things without feeling sick. I moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment near Bettina's house. It was modest compared to the ranch house, but it felt clean and honest. There were no ghosts in those rooms. There were no memories lurking in the corners. I bought new furniture and hung new curtains and started building a life that belonged only to me. The grief came in waves I did not expect. Some days I was angry at Franklin for stealing 22 years of my life. Other days, I was angry at myself for being so blind. I replayed every conversation, every moment, every red flag I had ignored. Bettina kept telling me it was not my fault. She said Franklin was a professional liar who fooled everyone he met. She said I was a victim, not a fool. I wanted to believe her, but the shame was hard to shake. I started seeing a therapist who specialized in helping people recover from betrayal trauma. She taught me that what Franklin did was a form of abuse. He manipulated me and controlled me by keeping me in the dark about his true life. He made all the financial decisions so I would be dependent on him. He isolated me from anyone who questioned him, including my own daughter. He created a reality that served his needs and trapped me inside it. Understanding this helped me stop blaming myself. Cecile and I stayed in touch after the court case ended. We talked on the phone every week, sometimes for hours at a time. She was the only person in the world who truly understood what I was going through. We had both loved the same man. We had both been betrayed by the same lies. We had both lost decades of our lives to a fantasy that never existed. 6 months after the estate was settled, Cecile flew to Tulsa and we met in person for the first time. I picked her up at the airport and we hugged like old friends, even though we had never stood face to face before. We spent a whole weekend together, sharing stories and crying, and sometimes laughing at the absurdity of our situation. Two women in their 60s who discovered they were married to the same con artist. It sounded like a bad movie, but it was our real lives. Cecile told me something during that visit that helped me heal. She said Franklin was not capable of real love. He was too busy maintaining his lies to ever connect with anyone genuinely. The charming man we both fell for was a performance, a mask he wore to get what he wanted. The real Franklin was empty inside. He filled that emptiness with secrets and schemes instead of authentic relationships. She said we should not mourn the man we thought we married because that man never existed. Bettina and I grew closer than we had been in years. I apologized for dismissing her warnings about Franklin. I apologized for choosing him over her when she tried to tell me the truth. She forgave me without hesitation. She said mothers make mistakes, and that is what makes them human. She said what mattered now was that we had each other. I started volunteering at a women's shelter downtown. I met other women who had been deceived by men they trusted. I shared my story with them, not for pity, but as a warning. I wanted them to know that predators do not always look dangerous. Sometimes they look like the perfect husband. Sometimes they bring you flowers and remember your birthday and say all the right things. The most dangerous lies come wrapped in love. 2 years have passed since Franklin's funeral. I am 70 years old now, living quietly in my small apartment with a cat named Honey who keeps me company. I have dinner with Bettina every Sunday. I talk to Cecile on the phone every Wednesday. I go to therapy twice a month and volunteer at the shelter once a week. My life is smaller than it used to be, but it is honest. Every relationship I have now is built on truth. I think about Franklin sometime, not with love anymore, but with a strange kind of curiosity. I wonder how he kept track of all his lies. I wonder if he ever felt guilty for what he was doing. I wonder if he loved any of us at all, even a little bit. I will never know the answers. Franklin took his secrets to the grave, and maybe that is where they belong. The woman who tried to steal his estate is serving 5 years in prison for fraud and identity theft. I do not think about her much. She was just another predator trying to profit from other people's pain. The justice system handled her. My job was to rebuild my own life. If there is one lesson I want you to take from my story, it is this. Trust must be earned continuously, not given once and forgotten. Pay attention to the people who love you enough to tell you hard truths. When someone seems too perfect, too smooth, too good at saying exactly what you want to hear, ask questions. Demand proof. Do not let charm blind you to character. My husband had 3 wives, 3 separate lives, and 3 different versions of himself. He fooled all of us for decades. But we survived. We found each other. We built something real from the ashes of his lies. And that is a victory he can never take away from us. If this story moved you, please subscribe to my channel and leave a comment telling me where you are watching from. Your support means everything, and I read every single message you share.